His vacation. Oh my Call this meeting to order.
Done.
We are live.
Hello, everyone. Do that again. Let's call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now.
Pull the stuff and then redirect it.
Not gonna call.
Pick it up more, pick it up more. And then you can direct it as people ask questions.
And welcome. It's so nice to have you. So I think you met all of us.
Yep.
And so why don't we just dive right in? Because I know you've had a very, very long. I'm so glad to hear that. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to apply for this position, superintendent.
Well, I've been a superintendent for 20 years, believe it or not. 8 up in Maine, and then 10 in Rockport, and then 2 as an interim superintendent. So I'm excited about the prospect of Nahant because it's so much resemblance to what I'm about, what I believe in, and my values, and that was confirmed today. Seeing the kids, seeing the teachers, talking with the custodians, seeing the kids in the hall, you know, asking them, are you getting your money's worth? Yes, you know, they knew what that meant. And I've had kids say, nope, not at all, I'm not getting my money's worth. So I've applied because I'm not at the end of my career, I'm near the end of my career, but this may sound a little boastful, but I believe I have 10 years left in my tank. And I can't think of any better place to end up than here. So I think that sums up small school. It's a lot like the schools that I've worked in and been in, led, and been proud of. So that's why I'm here. I could tell you a lot about myself, but that's not necessarily down the list. I'm sure there are other questions, but from the background and resume, but I'm make sure I clearly answer your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know you've met a lot of people today, and I'm curious as to your thoughts regarding the community, what you've learned, and do you have any feedback for us that you want to share?
I mean, it's confirmed what I sort of studied about and watched. I've watched a lot of your school board meetings. I've read your contract and your handbook and Googled your principal and found out his background. It's sort of, I always do my homework with regard to stuff, and it's confirmed that this is a gem of school and a gem of the town. It's, you know, you're out on the causeway, but it's very tight. It's clear that you value your most precious resource for kids. And any place that does that validates what I believe in, because kids get one shot at it, and it's clear that your kids are in a good operation to have the best shot and move it forward. So that, my overall impression of the day, I didn't see anything negative. I didn't say anything like, whoa, what's that? Or why is that happening or whatever. I didn't read anything in the handbooks. I'm gonna read some things in a teacher contract I might think would be different, but that's only looking at it with a superintendent's eye about language and that kind of thing. But that's sort of got nothing to do with the feel of a building. The building feels warm and comfortable. The kids seem like they're happy to be here, and what else matters? The bottom line, what else matters? So.
Thank you again. So I'm going to turn it over to Leanna. Okay.
As you know, Nahant is a very small district. We have Mr. Andrews as our principal. How do you envision supporting the daily operations of the school?
I think first in the 2-day-a-week position, that's a little more difficult than a 5-day-a-week position, but I know who I am, and I think by default, you would probably find me here more than 2 days a week. And it's just what I would do. I would want to make sure that the principal and I had a really close working relationship so that I wasn't stepping on his toes, being where I didn't belong, where I wasn't welcome. I like to get into classrooms, not to evaluate teachers, but to just see teachers doing good work and seeing kids. And I wouldn't want Kevin and Mr. Andrews to feel that that was taking something away from him. So he and I would have discussions about philosophy and how we work together. And, you know, I've taken over for a principal that had to be out, you know, our husband in Boston with a serious operation, deep brain stimulation, and I took over for 3 weeks and sat in the elementary hallway like Mr. Andrews does and set up shop. Had my cell phone, my computer, and it's just what you do. You take one for the team, you work together in the best interest of kids. That's the bottom line, and that would be my expectation for him. We talked earlier in the day, and that's the only expectation. You know, is that we're both totally committed to kids. And that we're honest with each other. You know, and open and honest behind closed doors. And if I'm doing something that is not in his ballpark at the time, that we talk about that. And I would want to have the same ability to, you know, go to any of the administrators that work with me and have an honest discussion with them. And it's all focused on what's best for the kids. So
Great.
I think that hopefully is the answer. I think that, you know, all of the superintendent in small schools is a difficult one because it's different than what you would be if you were the superintendent in, I'll just use Gloucester as an example. There was a difference between being the superintendent in Rockport, Massachusetts, and being in Gloucester. Gloucester had 3 or 4 elementaries, had a middle school, had a high school. Rockport had everything right there. Your office was in the high school. In Gloucester, it's off in some work complex somewhere. So the business of a superintendent and their work style is totally different than it is in a small school. So he doesn't have an assistant principal. So he and I would be tag teaming a lot of things that other people would do in other buildings. And we'd have discussions about things like, well, who writes the grants? We've already done that. Is that a principal's job? Is that a curriculum coordinator? Well, there isn't one. Is that an assistant superintendent? Well, there isn't one. So therefore it becomes between me and Mr. Andrews, make sure the work gets done. So we have to be very clear with each other, work with each other very closely, meet on a regular basis. And I don't micromanage his work. He's hired to do a job. And that's what I would expect. And you hire me to do a job if you hired me, and I would try to meet your expectations. So I hope that's the answer to how I see
No,
that
that's
question.
great. Thank you. It actually is perfect to lead into the next question. So in terms of evaluating, like, how have you evaluated a principal in your previous districts? And also how can you like support the principal, especially where there's areas that need,
Yeah.
you know, work or improvement?
Well, first of all, that ought to be based on clear goals from the previous evaluation and goals that the school committee, the community has somehow communicated to the supervisor who's in the seat of the superintendent that, you know, need to be worked on. I think you've worked together on plans. I think you've helped think about what professional development was needed. And then, and I've always done this, that you should always survey the people that work for you. So with our principals, we just got done with an anonymous Google survey by all the teaching staff. We don't do the ed techs, we don't do the custodians. Maybe we should have a different survey. We do all the professional teaching staff. And they weigh in on 18 questions about the practice of an administrator based on national standards. And they get a chance to just say, exceeds, meets, proficient, needs improvement, unsatisfactory. If they say exceeds, they got to give reasons why, because somebody ought to hear that in my book. And if they pick needs improvement or unacceptable, they can't just, in my mind, toggle the circle. They have to say, because this happens or whatever. And then I look at that and I don't take one or two of the tail ends of that survey and grab it like a bone and shake it. But if I see a theme that runs through the entire process, then I think that's important to talk to a principal or to talk to a superintendent. I think you should do that with your superintendent. My superintendent always did it with me when I was a high school principal. And I would always run out and do my own survey with my faculty before he got to do mine. Because I wanted to hear, and I said, be honest with me, I'm gonna hear it. And it's anonymous. You would think there would be rock throwers, but there's not. And if there are, you exclude that, because there's some reason for that. But if you have a theme, perception's reality, I believe you have to respond to that theme, even if you don't believe in it. But it's only one piece of the evaluation. My favorite president wasn't Ronald Reagan necessarily, but I grew up in California. They had a phrase, trust but verify. So if you hear a theme, I think the obligation of the superintendent is to confirm that. Go out in the classrooms, in the building, take your own feeling of what you see, and either you validate, I have the same concern that the teachers have, or I think that teachers are misguided in this opinion of that. And then that's a different task you have to deal with. But I think it's a 360. You have to listen to your stakeholders.
Mhm.
And in high school, you listen to kids.
Yeah.
So what happened, can you take us down just a tiny bit though? If there is a perception, there's a
Yep.
theme and a perception. Of something going on in the school that teachers or staff,
Yep.
you know, are frustrated by, concerned about, whatever. And you feel that the underpinnings are different, or that you might understand where it's coming from, but you don't agree. How do you round back with teachers about that? Where do you push? What are the next two
I would
steps?
hope in a well-functioning school that you could have people come and see you in a confidential way and give you more details about that, behind closed doors, and that they could trust their superintendent that that individual would not open their mouth and they would never let that out. And they'd be able to then ask follow-up questions of that individual, because you don't even know where it's coming from. But it's only fair to the person who's had an anonymous survey to be able to have a, fill in of the blanks of where that's at, especially if you maybe don't agree with that.
Mhm.
And so I'll be in the process of, actually tomorrow when I get back, I'll be sitting down with the SPED director and principal of the Hancock and Lemoyne schools, going through their evaluations with them and their contract for the next year. They're all on good standing. But there are areas that they could improve at, as everybody has. I have areas that I can improve at. And if it's year to year to year and it doesn't change, well, that becomes a different ballgame than something comes up in a particular year. COVID's going on and, anxiety's high and tensions are high and somebody's got a particular beef with their administrator, whoever that is. You can't hang your coat on that one situation. You've got to be able to look at it over time. So I believe that if I have a weakness, I have a right to know what that weakness is and to have the opportunity to get better at that,
Thanks.
to strengthen myself. If not, well, then you ought to get rid of me. I mean, that's sort of the bottom line. And I've always taken it to heart, but some people don't see that it's a good thing to listen to what teachers have to say. And I say, yeah, it does. When I was a high school principal, I thought it was important to listen to what kids had to say.
Right.
We do exit interviews. You'd get done with the class. And I'd go in with those seniors or whatever. What was good about this class? What was bad about this class? What would you change? Because you're done. And somebody else is coming after you. And don't you want this to be a good experience for that next group? And they would take that seriously. But, there were a few of the outliers, but mostly they were being put in a position where no one's ever asked us what we thought. And those kids was spot on for whatever I felt in those classes. And sometimes teachers took that to heart, sometimes teachers didn't want to hear it. It might be about, well, all you do is ask questions of the jocks in the classroom, the athletes. You never talk to the girls in the classroom. And then I bring that up to the principal. And I do a sheet where I've marked the number of questions you've answered, and I've said, well, there's the sheet. These are the females in the class, these are the males, these are the X's for everybody you asked a question of. It's clear you favor one gender versus the, I never knew that. So it doesn't have to be in a negative way, because what you wanna do is to get somebody to be as good as they can, at what they've chosen to do. So I believe you can't hide from, you know, an issue that's there. And then you gotta be able to listen to explanations or whatever it may be. But I don't think you hide from that. I think you ask the people who are your consumers. It's not business, but businesses do that.
Right.
Or they fail. I think schools should do that, or they fail in the eyes of the people that support them. I really believe that. That's not just because I'm sitting on an interview. I believe that in my heart. So that's either a good answer or not. And that's fine.
How would you foster a cohesive and supportive environment for the administrative staff and the teachers and sort of everybody so that they're working together in the school for?
I think you set the tone, you're the top person, and you had an opening day meeting with the teachers. I assume you have that, an opening workshop. I do a presentation. I've always done one. It includes poems about what it means to be a child. And I read them, and there's pictures of my own grandkids there. And strangely enough, I don't mean it to happen in Rockport, the people sitting in the front row crying. But I believe that they should know why you're there on the first day. And it's all about what it means to be a child. And are you gonna treat me this way, or are you just gonna mass produce me? Are you gonna ask me a question that matters, or are you gonna ignore me? And the poem goes down through this, what it means to be a child. And they've all got kids, most of those teachers in the room, and they're about to walk into a classroom with 20 kids the following morning. And I believe my job set the tone for that. And I get crying. That last day I got crying because it was my grandkids, and it's like, this could be my last day in the school. And I looked at them and I said, they deserve the best shot. They don't go to this school, but somebody's gonna teach them tomorrow morning at Hamilton Wenham. They're gonna walk into a classroom, my little twin grandson boys, they walk into a classroom. Back then that would be first grade. And it's how they're treated, and they're totally different, completely different kids. And then my granddaughter's gonna walk into a classroom. And she's growing up and discovering the world, and how a teacher treats her. It's make or break her life. So I believe the answer to the question is, well, not too long, is it's the responsibility of the superintendent to set the tone, and the principal to set the tone. It's his building. But it's also, it's not a district, but it's my district. So it's, the two overlap tremendous. But I think kids should know who their superintendent is. They should be able to talk to their superintendent. They should be able to come into the office and sit down. And difficult to do in 2 days, but that's nature of the beast. So you either adjust to it. I'm in hallways, I greet kids in the morning. When they come into the school building, Mr. Andrews does the same thing, meets the buses. You know, in high school, you're trying to make sure they're not stoned when they come through the door. You know, and they say, "Well, come over here, young man. We gotta have a little discussion. It wasn't me, it was my father." And in some cases, it was the kid's father. But you can't smell like that in school. Sorry, I'll change. But I thought that's how you set the tone for the day. You meet the kids at the door. And if the kid was crying, come over here, what's the matter? Had a bad night, who knows what happened at home? Who knows what happened? You don't sit in your office. I'm not an office guy. I'm a hallway guy and a walker.
I love it.
That's what else you doing that.
Okay. In terms of conflict resolution, what does that look like to you? And can you maybe just give us like some specific examples about,
Which question are we on? Just
Oh,
Number 4.
yes,
focus problem. Number 4.
Yeah.
You try to get to yes. You try to do what's right by kids. That's your North Star. So depending on what the conflict is in school, it's probably about kids somehow, in some way. And if you focus it back to that, I want to make sure it's solved. I don't avoid conflict. I don't revel it, and I don't go looking for it. But when it comes my way, I'm not afraid of it. Because it's not going away. And I think I have good people skills. I think I have good resolution skills. I'm not a hostage negotiator, but you know, conflicts aren't good between kids, between your teacher and kid, parent and teacher. That's the nature of the beast. It's the world. So what do? I'm not sure I can give you a big list. I go by situation, and I do a lot from my heart in terms of how I feel, how I would feel. I try to put myself in other people's shoes. How would I feel if I was that parent? How would I feel if I was that other kid? And if it's a conflict between kids, get the opposite individual to understand how that other kid felt in that situation. So to me, that's the whole grail of conflict.
Rob, can you describe a time though,
Yep.
that you have worked through a conflict, maybe, between a student and a teacher, or two teachers, or a parent and somebody?
Yeah, but I can give you a quick example. So I'm in high school, kid gets sent down, I'm an assistant principal. And the kid walks into the office, I'm not sure, I may have given this example in my first interview, and I might not have. And he's thrown out of the class because he's told the teacher off. It's his math teacher, his general math teacher. He's said the worst thing you can say to her. So she sent him out.
Mhm.
He sits down, he's from a little offshore island. And he says, I know I'm wrong, I'm in trouble, I'm gonna get 5-day suspension, I read the book, disrespect to a teacher. But what are you gonna do to her? I said, what are you talking about? He said, the only reason I told her off is she called me stupid. I was working on a math problem, I didn't understand it, she's leaning over my back, and she looks at all the other classes around, the general ed class, a general math class. And all his friends are there, and the kids he's with every day, and she says, what are you, stupid? So he told her about it. He said, I get it, I'm in trouble, I pay the price, no problem. What are you gonna do with her? Well, that was a conflict that needed to be resolved. He had to go back to that math class. And I called her in, and basically we went through how unacceptable it was to call any kid stupid. And what are you gonna do to make it right? First of all, she had to accept it was wrong. And then she had to offer up to me the reason how she could make it right. Which was, she came up with it, apologized in front of the class for what she said, apologized to him first. He accepted it, he went back to class, he was fine. She was a good teacher. But she said a very bad thing, and that was a tough conflict right there. That's the first one that comes to mind, I guess.
Thank you.
And I was involved in solving that conflict. Otherwise, that would have been really bad. If I just kicked the kid out, and then he'd come back, and it's like nobody even defended me. He didn't even speak to her. You know, the kid took ownership,
Mhm.
and the adult had to take ownership in my book. And then we move on. So
Great, thank
I
you.
could give you other examples of conflict, but
Well, that's great. The last question for me is, how do you establish performance matrices for yourself and the staff that you have? Number 5.
well, it all trickles down from my father. His standards were pretty high. And you basically, if you brought home a report card, it was all A's and 1 B. It wasn't nice job on the A's. It was, why'd you get a B? It's just the way he was brought up. So I hold myself to pretty high standards. And I expect myself to leave Nahant better than when I found it. You know, when I leave, whenever that is, if I get the job, that I've made a difference. And my metric is to, have I done everything I could do when the bell rings, when the last gun goes off at a game, if it's sports or whatever, or if it's in a school year, have I done everything I can do? That's my measure for myself. Now for staff, it's not quite as high because you really can't go out and sell that particular standard. You do it for yourself. But it's to give their absolute best for the kids that they work with, whether they're a custodian and how the place looks, or whether they're a speech therapist and how they deal with that child's speech impediment as a former stutterer. And I just think you make sure people know that you have high expectations for what they do. They're not paid enough. None of them are, but they perform a very important task and it matters. It's one of the most important things in the world is teaching. And why are you in it if you're not giving your absolute best? So the metrics are looking at their grades and their standards, but I would look at growth. You know, if I got a classroom and let's say it's third grade class, whatever, and I'm teaching it, and I have no control over who comes in, who I've got, what their levels are. But if you can measure where they are at when they start, then the measure of what I am as a teacher is, well, how did they progress? What was their growth over time? And the old MCAS, and maybe the present MCAS, I've been away from now, gives a student growth profile and shows the group of kids, how they compare to other kids that scored the same way. And even though the raw score may not be up here, if the growth score is 60 or 65 or 70, which I've seen in a lot of your scores, that's all I care about, is how much does those kids grow under your staff teaching the individual teacher. Because if all of a sudden they've got high scores, but the growth is terrible, I got a problem with that, I guess, that you didn't really move that group further forward. You sat on your laurels and thought, well, they'll just carry me to the promised land. No, they won't. Where's the growth? So that's a pretty high standard, I think. And I have the same standard for Kevin, and I would want you to have the same standard for me, because I read somewhere in your literature that near the bottom of your description of what you were looking for in a superintendent, you felt very strongly that you got that best school system or best school in the Commonwealth. The bottom of your blurb. So I came, all right, is that really true or not? And what I've seen, I said, by indications that that's true. And my comparison is Rockport Elementary or whatever. And that you guys hold right up to where they're at without any stretch of the imagination. In terms of who you have leading the school, the teachers in the building. So,
Yeah. You have a really
and of course, one day slice. Talking about a long time to look, takes a while to get a real feel for, not a long time, but that's the first thing I would do, would be try to get a feel for what's really here or not. Was that just a show the first day?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for all your answers so far. The next questions are about the budget. How would you get input from key stakeholders on annual budget priorities, including staff, parents, and students?
Yeah, I think that occurs over time. I hope you're listening. You look first, you need to listen enough that those are pretty clear. And they pop up at different times, and then it forms a matrix and becomes clear what the priorities are. And I think you can put out surveys and all that kind of stuff, either anonymous or real, to confirm that. But I think someone who's really paying attention already knows what those priorities are, you know, and sense that. They may not be able to fund those, they may not be able to staff those. But they sure know what they are. I believe that. I think I've always been able to do that.
Thank you. Describe your current relationship with your municipal officers.
Yeah, I've never had I'll give you a short answer on that. I've never had a problem with that.
Okay.
I met Tony today. You have a really, really good town administrator in my book. I sat with him for an hour. Went to school here. I came back, read a local paper that he just got maybe he wrote the article, maybe somebody else did. He just got a 5-year extension to his contract. So pretty impressive. And what I saw today was really impressive. And I saw a great relationship with the present superintendent. We were talking about things that we were right on the same line with that. I've never had problems, but only time I had one problem with the town board. And that was was in Rockport after the Newtown shooting. And we wanted cameras. All we had were the phone in the office had a black and white hazy image. But you couldn't tell if it was a guy from Law and Order or Stephen King. And that's who you had to let in for. But we didn't have money, we wanted cameras. And the finance committee had a reserve. The town manager says, go ask the finance committee, Rob, for $50,000 for cameras. So what does Rob do? He parades down there and asks them for the money, and it caused a huge controversy about, can't you take that out of that school budget? No, it's all committed. And we need the cameras. And we got the cameras because the finance committee said no, but the select board said, no, we're overruling. And we've got cameras all over Rockport High School. Some of the school committee members were against cameras being big brother-ish in too many places. You know, so that we could have an end of a hallway to see where a active shooter might have gone, but not in multiple locations in that hallway. They were afraid of how they might be used by administrators that might not have been using them for the right purposes. And those cameras were in police cars, that you could see it on your laptop. They could see it at town hall, the police chief could see that, and then we had an incident where there was almost a horrible tragedy in our school. 47 years of young girl student, 7th grade, got stabbed. And the only way that perpetrator, who we had no knowledge of where that kid was a problem, was quiet, and they weren't even related to each other. Somehow he must have been, who knows what the psychological profile would be. Only way the police in Rockport caught that kid was with the camera footage. They saw which way he left, which way he went, and they found him sitting on a rock down on the shore. And there he was. And she lived, she's fine, she'll be a senior. The worst thing that happened in my 37 years. You would say what's the worst thing that ever happened? I was it.
Difficult,
So-
for sure.
I wouldn't normally talk about that in an interview, but that was town officials who said, no, you can't have the money for the cameras. Well, it's okay, I'm going above you, I'm going to school committee then. I came to you first, now I'm going up the chain. So they didn't like the jumping over the chain. And they weren't elected officials, they were appointed FinCom members. And I wouldn't normally do that, but I felt so strongly about school security at that time, as you folks have done. With your $50,000 grant, film over windows that doesn't shatter the glass, and your camera systems, you've done a lot. And I guess I should say Tony's done a lot to really spearhead that grant and make that happen as one of his last official acts. Is to carry that out in a great way. So that was one time I didn't care. I was going to get the cameras one way or the other. If I hadn't gotten from the selectmen, I would have found somebody in town who had money, and we wouldn't have done it that way. Because I was that insistent on we're going to get that done. So
Great, thank you. The next question is, have you ever been a superintendent in a district that had a financial shortfall? How did you resolve it?
closest I've been is in Rockport, where they would only give us no more than 2.3% increase to our base funding per year. And they'd only give us the 2.3 if we held our budget to no more than a 3% increase. Well, that doesn't work in schools. That combination of finances does this over time. So we passed an override the second year before I left. And it refueled our reserves, which is what we were doing with $2 million or whatever, raise taxes, through an override. It was voted and it passed by 10 votes. It was demanded a recount, passed by 8 votes. I was one of those votes. My wife was another one of those votes. And otherwise the school system would have been having to lay off people because we would have run out of finances. Because a 2.3 increase in your base when you had a salary contract that was 80% people, and it was a 3% raise, and it's really not 3% because people are stepping and lane moving. It was really a 6% increase increase 80% of your budget, it was like, we're done. We gotta have an override. But we had built a model that predicted when it was coming. And even the finance committee, my friends with the lack of the cameras said, yeah, it's time for an override. We support that. Townspeople weren't excited about it, but it's because they created this model that you could not survive on the school system. You would have to shortchange kids and lay off staff and eliminate programs.
Visuals are very effective.
But we didn't get the shortfall. We didn't run out of the money, but we were 8 votes from running out of the money.
Great. The next question is, what is your process for developing and presenting a budget to the school committee?
Well, I should say exactly like Tony's.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
I've watched his meetings and I've watched his PowerPoints, and I would just duplicate all that.
Yeah.
And I know he's not super liberal with his funds and how he looks at a budget. He makes sure he gets what he needs. And I'm very much like that. So, I mean, I believe you ask for what you need, not necessarily what you want. It's a difference. Needs a little lower standard. You really gotta have what you gotta have. Some of the things you want, you may talk about those in the initial part of the process, but you may not be able to push them through in the final budget push. You maybe have to prioritize down to 1 or 2 of those and then really fight for them. But you can't be scattershot with like all these dreams and goals. I think you have to lay them out so people know what you're really looking for. But when the reality hits, there are people out there that have tough financial situations that can't take big tax increases. So you have to respect taxpayers at the same time. I, in a kind way, say Tony's old school, and I say that with respect. Because he's a keeper of the town, he's a keeper of the money, and his draw are sheets with balances on it, and they come out and he knows exactly where it is and what it is. And that's pretty impressive in my book, so.
Great. Please tell us about the experiences you have had with collective bargaining on both sides of the table, in management and as a teacher. How would bargaining be different in the current economic environment?
I think the economic environment's a little better than it was, especially during COVID. I think we're recovering, rebounding. Collective bargaining, I would put that high on my list of things that I do on the island and Missouri. We had 70 different teacher contracts, all that fed one school. And I created a common contract with the help of the school committees, each of which had 5 members on it, times 13 parties, even though there were 7 contracts. So we're sitting with 30-some people in the room, trying to get to one contract from 7 different contracts, all with different rules of personnel. And we spent 1 year just doing a study year. We sat in a room like this with people's clauses pasted on the wall. We weren't negotiating. It was like, in a perfect world, what would you take that would make this contract common that could go there and benefit everybody? I take that, or I take this. And then we negotiated, we put together a common contract, it's still there on that. I believe in win-win negotiations, interest-based negotiations. I believe you don't hide stuff. I believe you put your best offer on the table as soon as you can. Because otherwise you game plan. And you ask the other side to do the same thing. And you try to find out what people's bullseyes are, what they really have got to have. And then you try to pull that off the best you can. And maybe it's sometimes done with language instead of money. There's different clauses in language that can make life better for a teacher that isn't necessarily something you grab and take home. So collective bargaining with me, I'm very close where I work to the teacher association presidents and the negotiators to find out who they are. I'll try to set up a relationship with them. I meet with them before negotiations start. Try to talk about reality, what money's available, what money isn't. Now in Rockport, we had that 2.33, so it was like, that's as high as I can go. Now, how are we going to distribute that? We can talk about that, but I can't go above that number. Because we won't get the 2.3 if our budget's over 3. So that made negotiations easier, because it was bookmarked. You're not in that situation, and we're in an environment where in the state of Massachusetts, unions are looking for really big raise amounts. I think in Rockport, the first request was for 18% increase in scale. That's 18% before steps and before lane change. And it's like, really, how would that happen? Now, they're not gonna be satisfied with some 1.45 or whatever. But there's a lot of time wasted if 18 isn't realistic until you get to what you really can do. So I believe you do your homework before you start negotiations. And you're honest and you're transparent and you talk about interest-based negotiations. You try to get to yes. And I've had negotiations in Rockport that got over in 3 meetings. First meeting, exchange proposals. Do ground rules. Second meeting, exchange proposals. The third meeting, work out the details and get to yes. And they weren't big giveaways. They weren't 5% raises. They were 2s, 2.5s. For 3 years in a row, 1.45 before COVID. And we had teachers saying that doesn't pay my insurance increase. And the answer to that was, you're correct. But we were doing the best we could do with the money that the town would give us at the time. And they accepted that because you weren't dishonest about it. You laid it right out. I'd show it on a calculator, and if they'd say 18%, I'd put 18% in the lower right of the Excel sheet. And all the staff is there and it goes, shh. Well, if you have $1.9 million laying around, you could fund that company. Oh, yeah, we didn't think it was that much. Well, it is. I like doing collective bargaining because I think it can be a positive process. A lot of people are afraid of it, but I think people have interest and they're just trying to make their lives better. So, I remember.
Now moving to curriculum development. So Nahant, as you know, is a small district, and we have varying class sizes. Some classes can be small with 7 students, while others are as large as 28. What would your approach be to ensure education equity and high quality learning?
I just think you hire the best people to put in front of kids, to start off with. And you've got some opportunities to hire people right now. And that's the first step for equity, is hiring people that really care about kids and are good at their craft. And then let them do their work. That's a super important thing right off the bat. And then give them the tools that they need. You hope you get teachers, in my mind, that understand different learning styles of kids, that they spend time learning enough about kids that they know what those kids' buttons are, what turns them on, what inspires them, that they differentiate their learning to be a little different, maybe for Ben than it is for Tony. And if we're doing a math lesson, Tony may get a different set of problems than what Ben gets. You know, Ben maybe wants to be a reporter for the local paper. You know, so his is about selling papers, math problem, and Tony's is about figuring out his retirement income. But it's all the same standard. It's the same concept that's being taught, but it perks Tony's interest, perks Ben's interest, and the teacher is the puppet master of that. And it's the same stuff, but it's not delivered as, well, there it is. You know, suck it up and just deal with it. That you have educators that are experts at that. If you have a school full of that, you've got the best opportunity you possibly can have. I'm sure it's a continuum, but small class sizes are ideal for that. They start to get 23s, 24s, 26s, much harder. But if you've got classes like your 5th and 6th grade was with 7 and 8 and 9, then the next grade, 6th grade class is 9 or whatever. New teacher coming in. What a perfect laboratory for someone who can differentiate the learning for those kids. Get them set up for success in Swampscott. So my questions would all be digging in, how could they differentiate their learning? accelerate it and to remediate it without me feeling like I was stupid because it was remediated, or I was some big academic general because it was being sped up. That it was just what happened. You reached kids at their level, so they had success. To me, that's the holy grail of equity,
Well, this is a great
but it
segue.
starts with the teacher.
Yes, into the next question, which is how have you supported and strengthened curriculum and instruction in your previous schools? And additionally, how would you cultivate a working relationship with the Swampscott schools that helps bridge the gap between our curriculums?
I mean, I've worked in small enough schools that they're more often than not, it's not a curriculum director. There's not an assistant superintendent, so it falls on Kevin and me to be in charge of the curriculum and changes. So I brought in a new math program in Rockport, but we did it with teacher teams. We brought in a program called Envisions, which at the time was a cutting edge math program. And I wasn't the expert at that, but I coordinated the teams and how that was set up. With Swampscott, I think that's fertile ground to do work in that area. In terms of making sure that the teaching and learning is similar so that there's good interface between the two operations. I know Pam Angelakis pretty well. So when I was in Rockport, she's part of the Northeast Special Ed Consortium's board. So for 10 years, I sat at a table like this with the superintendent of Gloucester, Pam, superintendent of Masco or whatever, myself. And I think I have a pretty good working relationship with her. So I would want to talk with her, see if I could get some access to her curriculum people and maybe develop some teams here that would go up and start to compare and contrast. You know, because you might be way ahead, you might be even, you might be, you know, kids might be walking this Swampscott not fully prepared, but they might be walking in way more prepared and being held back. But I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Kevin does, maybe Tony does. But it's obviously your high school and your middle school. And there's no other choice. In some places, there's multiple choices. You folks don't have that.
Thank you. Speaking of choices, parents and guardians have many options to select for their students' education. And what experience do you have implementing programs and curriculum that support students remaining in our district?
Well, two alternative schools for one, kept kids remaining in our district or leaving for other schools, but it was keeping them from dropping out. They were specialized, individualized schools that were designed for kids that learned in an alternative way. Otherwise than that, to keep your kids here rather than going to a charter school or a private school or whatever. Some kids are just going to private school because that's what you do. And that's what I did as a parent, and you can't change that. It's just what happens. In other locations, it's, well, the private school must be better, and I'm not sure that's necessarily true. Because kids in a public school, in my mind, see kids from all different walks of life, for good and bad. In a private school, that's not necessarily the case. They see a certain group of kids. So if I'm going to be a really good defense lawyer, let's say in my life, 20 years from now, I'd be better off going to a good public school, learning about other kids that maybe had different struggles who were then going to be my clients someday. Than I would have been going to some highfalutin prep school where everybody was perfect, quote unquote. So otherwise than that, I mean, you just try to offer the best product you can and hope parents want to be part of that. Know that they don't want to leave. And I don't know how many kids leave here to go to other schools. That's what you're talking about, right? You can go to a charter or private school. Some of it, again, is not within your control. So.
Can I push a little bit more on that, Patty? Let's say, let's say all the school, the local charter, the Catholic schools serve a relatively, it's not that different a population, right? How would you, and we don't have a lot of schools, kids that but we do have a few, and a few at a tiny school is more meaningful, right? So how would you double down on how would you make sure that parents here who might be on the fence, understood the value proposition of the Johnson Elementary
I
School?
think you'd have discussions with them. I think you'd have an open door policy where they can feel comfortable coming to you. And we had a gentleman who come to the public forum. A lot of his questions were along those lines. And he probably have sent his kids in.
Mhm.
He came to meet the superintendent. And he had two questions. One was about guns in homes that weren't locked down. That was a pretty good question. The other one was about education. What the school can offer his children who are young and going to be here. So we had a pretty good discussion. Now, I didn't have a huge base of knowledge to say, well, this and this and this and whatever.
Right.
But I think you have open communication, invite people to come talk to you. And hopefully they do that. And if not, well, then you're not a lot of things you're gonna do to change that. So.
I'll just, sorry, I'll follow up on that. I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of, they do, I would say the main pull for the other schools is opportunities for enrichment from their perception, from parent perceptions. And if they're not maybe necessarily being supported enough for their academic needs. So, and when you only have one classroom, and there's not a lot of opportunity to, break it down into groups, because you only have single digit students in some classrooms, and, along those lines of developing the curriculum for, as you say, differentiation is challenging.
I mean, I think in my mind, you spend a lot of time seeing what other people are doing in other schools that are working for them. And you don't just sort of nail down to your own viewpoint of things. Well, what's this person got for a program? What are they doing in making successful scores in X school or Y school? And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can go out and find out what that stuff is. And that's why you hire a superintendent. It is part of a principal's responsibility, but they've got massive responsibility. So I think part of the superintendent being in those discussions, like at Essex Tech and at the consortium, hearing about a new program. That's interesting. Where'd you get that? How'd you fund it? I'm trying to bring that back. So.
Which is a good segue into the last question regarding curriculum development. Are there any programs you envision implementing to support student participation?
Well, right now, just because of coming out of COVID, it was, at least in the school line, and making sure we had social workers. And we have 3 social workers. In one school, we have 2 with 165 kids. The other school has 1 with 120 kids. And they were originally funded with ESSER money. And in 2 weeks, I'll go to one budget meeting and try to say why we should add another 85,000 to the second social worker. Because I think it's money well spent. It allows those kids to stay in school, not just physically, but mentally. And COVID hasn't gone away. The effect of that is still here. But that's not a program, but having social workers in school was never around. I was guidance counselors, that kind of stuff, about where you were going to college. These are safe people that kids can talk about their stresses, their problems, their anxiety.
Right.
And years ago, I would have thought that was sort of stupid stuff, and now I don't. So,
I wonder about curriculum. That was, sorry. I know that a lot of your experience has obviously been in the high schools. And how do you feel about, confidence wise and translating that to an elementary school and curriculum development?
in terms of, quite understand the question, could be partially my hearing.
No, I'm just interested. I mean, obviously the goals of,
you know, the day, even just the day-to-day in an elementary school is, you know, hopefully not the same as what you would see in a high school, and so,
It's
you know,
not dramatically different.
Yeah,
Just
all right,
with
fair.
Smaller people.
smaller.
You know, with Munchkin, I mean, it's not, yeah, high school is a different animal, but, my latest part of my career has been just elementary.
Yeah.
So, Hancock and Des Moines is K to 8, or pre-K to 8. And when I was in Rockport, I spent most of my time in the elementary school. So. I was a high school principal, so that was where most of my sort of administration mind was. But it's been quickly converted to
The little ones.
the munchkins.
Step support. Alright, so how do you balance staff teacher voice and the decision-making autonomy of the principal?
That's important that I don't create any kind of breeding ground for undercutting the authority of the principal. Really important. This is his building. He's in charge of his building, not only by law, but by reality. This is his building. And I'm in a strange position as superintendent, because again, it's right here at the same place at the same time. So that's delicate ground to tread upon. But teachers should be working through their chain of command, through their prime administrator. They should be working through the principal and with the principal. And I don't want to create an environment where they would skip over Kevin and come to me, because that would not be a good role for Kevin. And that's not what I would be looking for. So it's not that I wouldn't listen to them, but I think the answer would be, have you spoken to Mr. Andrews? Well, not yet. Well, then you need to do that. I wouldn't shut him up and not listen. Probably it's not my style. But the solution is within the person that is their building principal. That's important that I validate that and make sure that that's understood. And that's a tough interface right there, really is. But that's what I believe in, because he deserves every chance to be as successful as he can be, and should not have his superintendent meddling in that aspect of his job. So,
You know, a little bit along the same lines, how would you address culture concerns if there was some friction between staff members' point of view and an administrative decision?
that teamwork and creating with that wasn't something we worked for, and then maybe disagree. Disagree on something. Should be so. And they have to say it's just like it is. Right now I'm in charge of what else after you've had all the discussion about it. And people have to accept that, I think. Everybody isn't gonna agree all the time. But hopefully if everyone's here for the same reason, there's a commonality, that there's circles that intersect with each other. So, I hope it's up here.
But let's say all that's true, and you know, they're inevitably human beings, even when they are mostly on the same page,
Yep.
can have some friction. So let's say there's enough friction that people, you're concerned that some folks aren't moving on. How would you dive in? Like, what would be your first moves?
Have some individual discussions with them about why we are moving on. And in some cases, and that sounds like the best answer, but maybe they have to move on if they're not working for the common goal and the common good, that you've listened to all the feedback on it, and maybe it's not the right match for them, maybe it's not the right place for them, whether they be the superintendent or the principal or teacher. But I think you work towards commonality, and I think it's rare that would happen if you're doing the right groundwork before that,
Yeah.
that you'd have disagreement on educational issues. You're not talking about sort of each product that they can sell as a corporation. You're talking about what's right for kids, a lot of commonality there, so it's in the skill of the administrator to sell that. Therefore, you should not have those issues. And I don't, in my career, I don't remember flagship ones. If you said, give me an example of one you saw, I'm not sure I could necessarily do that.
Okay.
Because we've usually agreed to what, there's a philosophy of the school, there's a mission, there's a vision. And then it trickles down into the steps of, well, how is that mission carried out? What do you do as a teacher? What do you do as a principal? What do you do as a superintendent? Make that vision come to life. So if the person's argument doesn't fit into that, well then. I don't know what example that is.
Okay, thank you.
What has been your experience building opportunities for authentic staff and teacher input in major school functions?
Can I have for an example of the school function?
I think this is referencing not like a school event, but in the functionings of the
Oh,
school.
function.
Yes, I realize that needed clarification, and it's, yeah,
About
functioning,
the building day.
Yeah. functioning.
That feel that it's gonna be held against them. And I've always been able to do that. I don't know why that is. There's one of my letters that talks about. Had a chance to read the letters. He says he's from his heart, takes on things that others calculate to put it. Phrase he uses. He's a senator in the Maine House. He was our board chair. And he described me pretty well in that way, that I don't spend a lot of time calculating and, you know, thinking the odds and stuff like that. I try to go with what's going on, and part of it is looking in my teacher's eyes, my staff on it, and said, you got a problem, come to me. I do that as a principal, I do that as a superintendent. I would want Kevin to have that philosophy as well. Because I think that's important. We would need to be on a similar page about that. If Kevin felt different about that, then I certainly couldn't be doing it and Kevin not. We'd have to get to agreement as to why that's a good skill. And I'd have to be able to convince Kevin why there's no risk to having teachers voice their opinions. Doesn't mean you're gonna change. But having somebody be listened to is pretty important. And be validated and respected.
How have you designated and implemented both anonymous and non-anonymous feedback vehicles? After you've gathered feedback, how do you share back the feedback and move to action steps?
I think I answered that.
Yeah. Yeah,
For feedback.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be doing that this week. You think people want to hear, but they're clear opinions. My job to somehow create an environment where we can discuss that. With my goal being then be a better administrator.
when you get feedback, do you generally sort of close the loop with the staff, sort of what's been heard and
When
how
I did
that's
my
been
personal
actioned
one as
upon?
the high school principal, I tried to get it before my superintendent did. At a faculty meeting, I'd say, I want to go through the major themes of what people have brought up.
Mm.
Sometimes it might say, you seem intimidating at times, and I'd say, well, one of them, why is that? Well, you're always on your laptop and you don't look up and look us in the eye. And I'd say, really? And I think about it, was I multitasking enough that they came into my office with an issue and I didn't make eye contact with them to validate that? I said, I'm gonna try to get better at that. I want you to tell me if I'm getting better at that, and I want you to tell me if I'm not getting better at that. So now I routinely close my laptop and I look someone in the eye, and makes me a little nervous sometimes looking someone in the eye, but I'll do it if it makes them feel like what they're saying is important to me. And I didn't want to portray that. How would I have known if they didn't put it in the feedback? The anonymous, so I'd be honest with them. That's something I'm trying to get better at. So there's an example of feedback on myself that I wanted that. So I'd ask for it.
So moving on to parent and student support.
Hmm. Okay, now we're gonna talk about how you build, how a student builds to maintain community and be in a relationship when knowing that communities can kind of evolve in diversity, whether it's racial diversity, family diversity, income, et cetera. And so we get a few questions along those lines. So how, can you say a little bit about how you've supported historically marginalized groups? Where we were talking about BIPOC families, that's African American Latinx families, LGBT families in your work in schools. And what are some of the ways that you have helped these families be seen, represented in all facets of the school community so they can feel a sense of belonging and celebrated in the fabric of school?
Again, it's them knowing you as a person and coming to talk with you and expressing how they feel. That was two of the folks that came in tonight at the three. We wasn't on the LGBT situation. And I try to treat all kids the same. I try to have kids have them know that. And try to pay attention to them. Treat them as I would everybody else. I don't go out of my way, do anything different. That's a skill or actual act. You know, the LGBT part of the situation. So that many years ago, we had a certain under race. Just to have them know you as a person, so that they can go to a safe person. So I try to make people know that I'm available for that.
Moving, that's great for you personally, moving beyond you as the person and more your responsibility as superintendent of the
But you try to
school.
have that pervade out to the others and have them buy into that same kind of philosophy.
Mhm.
And
What kind of moves might you make in the school environment though, aside from you, to make sure when an LGBTQ family or a family of color walks into the school building, or the students do, that they know that this is about their experience, their walk, their family too? What are some of those moves like that you'd want to see your teachers and your head of school, your principal make?
I'm not sure I have a perfectly clear answer to that.
That's
I think you have a lot of discussions about that. You have a lot of discussions in teachers' meetings about how that is, what perception someone new coming into school is, and they've seen it as an example.
Mhm.
And that you didn't find that acceptable, and why, and what your goal is with regard to that. But I think there's case by case basis of that. I'd have to see and hear more about your situations to be able to sort of diagnose how that has to be handled. But it would be my job to address that and to have expectations and to lay those out clearly to folks.
Okay.
I'm sure I'd have any evidence.
Thank you. How have you addressed these, how have you addressed homophobia and underlying bias as it's come up in other school environments? When there have been, like, sometimes there's, with, gay kids or kids from gay families, you know, educators can make the misstep of having it be like sort of a public referendum on that, or, rather than looking at like what that family needs for
You
support.
can't have them discussing that over classes or whatever.
No, I mean, like, saying like, well, I do or don't agree with something, you know, rather than just saying this family is what it is. We have to make sure all families belong.
Keep your opinions out of the school building.
Right.
That you're here to teach, you're here to be a principal, you're here to be an administrator, and you're a public school. You take kids from all kinds of different races and backgrounds and beliefs, and family situations, and your job is not to gossip about them and talk about them, and what you think are closed shops and behind doors, that you maintain a professional level at all times.
What about issues of racial bias? How do you have any examples of how you might have addressed that or how you did address that in any either as a high school principal or in superintendents?
Honestly, don't remember issues where I've had to address it.
Okay.
I would have a problem addressing it. I saw that bias.
Okay.
Things that are acceptable and things that are just not acceptable, not tolerated, that are non-negotiable. And I would have no problem telling somebody that. So, I've worked in predominantly schools that did not have, wide racial diversity. And for some reason I've tried to pick schools where I haven't seen that be an issue.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna move us on to success metrics. How do you know that students are on track? What are some of the ways that how are some of the ways that you
Yeah,
can?
I sit down and go through a lot of data. From the classroom, graphs, school, formative assessments and. just do a lot of- I'm not- And you able to pick up areas of weakness. Very low standard for grade and you achieve those or not. And the data shouldn't be a hard thing to figure out.
How do you, what's your way of looking at disaggregated data? So you make sure that you are looking at subgroups that are important in the school, whether it's using IEPs.
Most of the data five have been MCAS to break it down into subgroups. And unfortunately, some of your subgroups are so small that often end up with measurable numbers that show. And are data to get the.
And aside from MCAS, which, we all know the limitations of the MCAS being once a year, and you can certainly look at it longitudinally, but let's say you want to know how kids are doing in October in the school so that you can make it necessary pivots, let's say for kids using IEP in November. What would you want you and Kevin to look in that situation?
Benchmark assessments. Kids at different points during the school year that they could then compare progress of kids as the school year. That's set. So I would assume that if not, it would be easy to find those from other schools. And kind of MCAS once a year and then just go on and get school back for months. In school, develop acceptance and tag that real quick.
And what about the workforce in classrooms? Like you talked about, about the part one, that you also want to have a relationship with the school where you can go into classrooms and be able to see and support what teachers are doing, which is great. When you go in though, as you think about how do I know how kids are doing independent of the formalized assessments?
First, for happy kids, I look for kids that are engaged, for a teacher that is reaching all of their kids in different ways and around kids who do the thing. The kid can tell them what they're doing and it ties clearly to what that lesson plan was. And kids are engaged, they're inspired. You can tell that you walk in the classroom and just smell it. In my book, when it's there. And you can also walk in and go, it's something is not right here. They won't stand and deliver high school teacher that just got their back. There's 2 or 3 kids can down the back with their head down. Doesn't take long to figure that out. So I think you sense it, you walk in and it's. Somebody walking into a fight, you can see it coming. You walk into the classroom, you feel it.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know it's been a very long day. We've been here almost 11 hours. And I'm
That's
curious.
why I'm.
Good.
I'm just curious, do you have any questions?
Standard question when you start making a decision, but again, you don't have to answer that. Obviously, I wouldn't have been here if I didn't want this job, so. I'm very excited to work for you. Very excited to work with Kevin. I try to do Tony's legacy justice. My goal is always to try to leave the school better than when I found it. And he's done a lot of work to leave the school better than when he found it. And that's a charge to the new superintendent, whoever that is. If you decide I'm not the one and you want to re-advertise and find somebody else, then so be it. But I would be interested to know the status of my candidacy as quickly as I possibly could. Just
Absolutely. It's
because
crazy.
the job got advertised in December or whatever, and now it's almost April.
I know.
And, I can do something next year. One other little gig in the fire I was looking at, but this is the place I'm most interested in being. It's closest to home, it's closest to who I am and what I do, and there always should be a match. I mean, if I'm not the match for you folks, you guys should say thanks a lot for coming in. And if what I discovered today isn't the match for me, I should be saying, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. I guess I'm gonna do whatever. If it's not a match, you can't tell if it's gonna be a perfect match, but if it doesn't feel right, then it's not gonna work. That doesn't matter what it is, right? So buying a car, same thing, doesn't feel quite right, maybe we shouldn't buy it. Get married, I'll make sure of that for you.
I don't remember that.
Selecting a school, picking a teacher, I don't care what it is. So I am who I am. Long, that was a short night, because that was my goal. But you're a great school, and it'd be an honor to work.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
your time. Thank you.
And we will get back to you.
Drive safe.
There was a question.
Yes.
Should I? I'm happy to move over there. Should I?
Nobody can see.
Can we
right?
get her? She's
I think she's trying to be out of camera. I'm not sure.
I promise I'm not.
Okay,
Wow. Real close up.
yeah, it's closer than normal.
Yeah, back
I'll
up a
come
little
around
bit,
to my girl.
but you have to be on too.
Yeah, or we can.
I'm usually not, which is fine.
We're just being lazy.
Nice trying.
Okay, so we are live, video and audio.
Okay, I apologize for that brief interruption. As we're repositioning the room. So now we're back to our regular scheduled programming. The reading and approval of the minutes from our last meeting that we had on March 12th. Has everyone had an opportunity to read those minutes?
I had an edit to make. I realized that at the top of the minutes, I put who's all here. And it noted that all the school committee members were here, and then it wouldn't make any sense if we voted only 3 voting members, so I just edited it and I'll submit the appropriate updated minutes.
Other than people, are there any other edits? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes with the edits?
I'll make a motion to approve the school committee meeting minutes for March 12th with the suggested edits.
Do I have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye. Wait a minute.
Oh, wait.
Carol votes. It's just me, you and Gina.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Oops, that's okay.
Aye.
Sure. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to acknowledgement of visitors. Hello, anyone that might be up there?
Madam Chair, we have Scott.
Oh, hello, Scott. Thank you. for
Hi,
joining
Scott.
us.
Any particular Scott or?
No, it just says Scott. I'm pretty sure it's Mr. Bullock.
Ah,
That's what I thought as well. Okay, has anyone received any correspondence, community input?
I have not.
I have not. Good man. Okay. Scott, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything you'd like to say? Oh, I can see she's not. So, behind you.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah. But he said, but he messaged. Okay, because he took it back. All right. Now, moving on to the examination and authorization for the data, of which I know we need to.
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In front of you is a grand total of bills for $72,647.32. The majority of that is for special education tuitions. And we have some typical Amazon services, our copiers, Stop and Shop. And without further ado, we have a bill from our psychologist, our consultant psychologist for $16.25. And without further ado, I would ask respectfully that a member of the school committee can make a motion to approve the bill roll for $72,647.32.
May I have a vote?
I'll make a motion to approve the invoices for approval at this meeting. In the total of $72,647.32.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I'd like to do is change the order. I'd like to do other first because of the interview that we just had. I'd like to bring the members of the school committee up on what happened today here at the Johnson School. I think that would be appropriate. The candidate, Mr. LeBeau, met with me at 9:30 to 10:30 in my office, then met from 10:30 to 11:15 with the special education director, Mary DeGuardia. He and I took a tour of the school, top to bottom, in and out. Thought the school was in great shape. At 11:45, he met with, Cheryl Delicio, Riley Edmonds, and Connie from the special education office. We had a brief lunch. I drove him over to town hall where he met with the town administrator and the finance director. We came back here to the Johnson Elementary School. He had a meeting with 7 staff members. And then after that, at 3:15, a meeting one-on-one with the principal. We had a little downtime when Ms. Kuchner came in and we spoke for a while. At 4:45, he met with 2 parents only. And at 6 o'clock, we had dinner, and several of you enjoyed this. Thank you so much. It was lovely. And then at 7 o'clock, the interview. So as members have mentioned, it was a full day, tiring day for Mr. Lebo. But you know me, I have endless, boundless energy.
You're still going.
I'm fine. A little crazy, but fine. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the flexibility. I have nothing to add to the safety and security grant, other than we have put in for 2 reimbursements from the state from the grant. The town, it takes a while for the town to log their revenue, so we have to go into the state system to find it. And as of now, one of the 2 checks have been cleared. And we are waiting for the plumber for the filters and for the filling station. Okay. Check that. That's a different grant. I apologize. That's not,
Security
that's
grant.
got nothing to do with health and security. We are basically done with the health and security grant and are, with one exception, and I humbly apologize. I just walked by the water fountain. The video cameras are all functioning very, very well here. We need a port to be open to the police station for them to get the last 4 cameras. So I don't want you to think they're blind. They have 16 of the 20 cameras visible to them. But the port will do 2 things. Number one, it will allow Mr. Andrews and myself to use our iPads and laptops, and from home on a weekend, for example, view all the cameras. Right now, we can only view I can view those 16. I'm not sure, can you?
I haven't tried.
Okay, you may not, because you need that second port open. But Charles opened up a special way for me to do it. And then the police will have all of the cameras. And I'll have the last 4 cameras, which I don't have now. Okay, and that's the only thing we're waiting on. And the reason that's important is, of course, by Mass General Law, I can't process, nor would I process the invoices unless the work was done. So, 99% of it's done, and we're waiting for one thing. And I talked to Charles today, and he said he's asked them to do it, and he's waiting for a response. The water fountains, which is the $3,000 water safety grant that I got, vis-a-vis copper and lead, we're waiting for the plumber. We thought it would be done winter break, and something is amiss. I can't give you a concrete answer to what is, because Vinny's been out for a week and he's the primary contact with the plumber, and I don't want the plumber to have to deal with 2 different people.
Oh, yeah.
It makes confusion. So I should be able to give you a better report next time. As I'm talking, let me give you the facilities update. Our guests thought our facility is in great shape. The only thing that I know of that is hanging out there is the gym roof.
We know, we know. It's like a ticking time bomb. The chicken grill.
So that's tonight.
Now, the only reason I bring it up, other than trying to be comedic, is that I thought I had a solution.
I know, you talked about it, that's new
Yeah,
technology.
and the two of the companies don't have anybody in the area and they won't do it, so I'm back to square one. And that was a $20,000 to $25,000 solution that would give us 5 more years,
Yeah.
seal the roof.
Sounded too good to be true.
Yeah, but I'm gonna keep trying before I leave. Everything else is in great shape.
You can't leave until the gym roof is there.
And remember the bottom,
Fantastic, and 10 years from now.
remember the bottom line on the gym roof. Doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah.
We can make that happen.
And Madam Chair, I defer the principal for the principal's report, which is labeled 7B in your packet.
It's all you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Superintendent Parentozzi, I'm happy to share my report tonight, it's, as Superintendent mentioned, he put in the packet under 7B. And we have a lot of artistic endeavors underway still at the Johnson School. I'm happy to let you know that Youth Art Month is still rolling along nicely and new students' artwork is being added to the slideshow continuously. And so that is accessible online, and I'll be putting a link to that slideshow on our website. We also had a photographer come in this week to talk to the students about an opportunity. The Nahant Cultural Council is going to be having a gallery exhibit of photographs now of Nahant by Nahant. And they want children to take part. And so they presented at our second lunch so that students in grades 3, 4, and 5 could hear about it. And Middle Fiore is going to be doing a couple of workshops after school. Yeah, and so it's all about digital artwork. That's what we mostly have, is digital, digital camera, iPad, iPhone, whatever you wanna use. And they'll be able to edit the picture on the first day, and then on the second day is really gonna be focusing on uploading it to the individual who's gonna be selecting and printing some of the copies. And they're gonna be printed in Boston on nice big paper, mounted in the cultural council. So it should be really special thing. So that, and right now we have about 10 students signed up, which is great, it's free, and I use them. On the teacher interview update, I wanna thank Ms. Anderson is on the committee, as is Riley Edmonds and Jennifer Marsh. And so they're helping out with the interviews, it is early, we wanted to get out of the gate early, cause that's when, the pool doesn't grow that much over the time, it's best to get people early if you can. But I think also a lot of students aren't looking yet for jobs, or it doesn't seem that way. We had a total of 6 applicants from all over the country, and 3 we interviewed, and in person. And so looking for 2 4th grade teachers, a 5th grade teacher, a PE teacher as well.
Okay.
And so we have an applicant for the PE teacher, and myself, Ms. Edmonds, our nurse, and 2 other teachers are gonna be interviewing a candidate.
Great.
Tomorrow afternoon. That one's always a hard one to fill because but this person wants part-time. I've never been able to hire somebody who wanted part-time, they usually be doing this and something else 3 days. Until they got the other thing 5 days and then left. So it's the hard part about this. But hopefully it'll work out. And again, we're early, so I think it's good. I want to let you know, student council has been very busy, they had an excellent spirit week, thanks for everyone who took part in that. And for Ms. Edmonds for organizing it, it was fun to support it and take part in it. We're also taking part in Operation Troop Support, which has students collect items for the troops and ship them overseas to wherever they are, or maybe in country as well. And Ms. Esther Johnson and Mr. Dana Sheehan are leading that effort on the adult end of things, and they're gonna present, and Mr. Sheehan's gonna come talk to the students again also about his duty and about what where he was deployed in the Middle East. So that'll be a brief presentation to grades 3 to 6. And then I wanna let you know that our school council met again to look at the school improvement plan and talk about that. We had a wonderful meeting. Again, it's Maggie Federo, Jennifer McCarthy, and Nancy Antrim are on that group. And our main focus for next year is gonna be implementing the new reading assessment that I've been talking about, DIBELS. That'll be one of our professional development focuses. Also differentiating in math, and continuing to strengthen our math program.
Thank you.
Okay. In curriculum, I wanted to let you know I've completed the Student Opportunity Act plan. Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Parental. Phew, nice timing.
How's that for timing?
That was great. That was great. Thank
And I
you.
apologize, I was supposed to be in the packet, I have no idea why it isn't.
Oh, it's fine.
Well, it is now. It's here on time, right on time. So Student Opportunity Act. This is an online form. You put it into this portal and then it prints out 18 pages, most of which are directions. And so I took all the parts that I added to it online. And tried to reformat it, so the formatting looks a little funny, but I think it's better than it was straight off the online computer. So the goal of the SOA, it's different than SA. School improvement plan is about how a whole school can improve. SOA's goal is really to narrow gaps between disparate groups, and so you try to see what disparate groups you have, and you identify how you can close any gaps you have. So we typically, as Mr. Lebo had referenced, can't use MCAS because we have too few students that take it. And so by the time you take your 60 that took it, and 4 of them identify as Hispanic, you can't really say anything about the stats. There's just not enough of the sample size. With iReady, I went ahead and did it anyway. I took stats in college. I didn't want a chi-square analysis on this report, but I did find that there was a gap potentially between Hispanic and non-Hispanic students. 11 students identified as Hispanic, and in iReady, we had about 130 students take the test. So again, it was around 8% or 7% of the students that took the test were Hispanic. And there was a 25% spread in the percentile achievement between Hispanic and Caucasian students. So I thought that might be an area where we could focus for improvement. We don't have any EL students here, students who didn't, work, for whom English is a second language. Those students aren't at our school right now. But we do have some Hispanic students. There was also a 14 percentage point spread between students who have an IEP and those who don't. And so I thought that was another area that we could look at, although I was happy to see that students who had an IEP were in the 40th percentile and the typical students who are not on IEP was 54 percentile. So the gap didn't seem so enormous compared to disability versus not disability. I expected there maybe would be a wider gap. So I was pretty happy that we had the 40th percentile result there. Okay, so we thought that this would be tackled in the classroom by the special education teacher. And I identified the 2 groups that we're looking at. There's other choices, but we just don't have enough of those students. I've reached out to school council, they've been involved with this, I've shared it with staff. I talk about how we're going to implement it on the second page there under section 4. So section 5 demands that you use evidence-based programs. The state is really big on this. And we're going to focus on 2 areas, SEL and mental health, and also also literacy assessment. So that'll kind of go hand in hand with our new DIBELS initiative. And I think myself and Ms. Edmonds are seeing that there is a need for mental health support in the school. And we work with students regularly that are concerned about coming into the building, are concerned once they're here, have worries. And I think that, anxiety would probably be the area we would probably focus on the most. And then again, on the last page, I mentioned about that we're going to be going from Harness Canal benchmark assessment system to DIBELS and some with iReady. And that is the Student Opportunity Act plan. And I wonder, Madam Chair, if you'd be willing to take a vote to accept this?
Of course.
The state, I believe, is asking school committees to review the plan and accept it.
Mr. Andrews, how, on section 3, you're setting the ambitious 3-year targets.
Mhm.
But is there any part of the plan that says how you're gonna reach the targets for specifically Hispanic and students and students on IEP? We break them so that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Good. Well, yes, the idea is to use M-Class intervention. Amplify is the company that makes
Yep.
the dibbles. And they also offer an intervention program. So it's an extra fee. But I'm thinking that that would be a good tool because we're using M-Class to measure the students' reading.
Yep.
They have a partner program.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair, if I may, unlike other concrete database systems that the DSE is doing with percentiles, percentages. In the SOA, they're not asking us to, for example, improve 5%.
Right.
They're asking us to close the gap.
Right.
So the ultimate goal is to have no gap in those 3 areas. You know, special education students, Hispanic students, and non-special education, non-Hispanic students. If the world were a perfect place next year, when the principal looks at the data, though the numbers would be, if not identical, very, very close. The other thing, we need to look more carefully at the attendance of the targeted groups of students. Because with our numbers, if we have one family with 2 students in our school who are either identified as special education or who are identified as Hispanic, and they miss 20% of the school year or 25% of the school year, then their achievement is obviously going to be impacted. And it's not really about instructional strategy and design alone. It's about getting them to school. And I just read a huge article today, nationally, post-COVID-19, public school attendance has fallen off a cliff. It's down about 7% nationally. Yeah, so if you think of 180 days, 7%. That's 10 more days a year. It's huge. So I did want to say that.
Yeah.
And we are looking at that.
And on that note, I am doing house calls with the.
Yes,
We have
thank
some
you.
measures to work on attendance.
Yeah, one is, so now instead of just calling home, I'm going to the home, and seeing if everybody's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I do want to follow up with that. As members of the school committee, a parent might perceive the principal's visit as discriminatory. And I want you upfront to know that it's not about anything other than attendance. So if you want to say it's discriminatory against families whose kids aren't coming to school, okay, that's fine. But if it's discriminatory because kids are special education kids or kids are from Hispanic families, that's untrue. Mr. Andrews is not saying I'm going to target family X for any other reason that the staff, Ms. Edmonds and the principal are concerned about attendance, because if a student's not in school, if a student, we have students who are missing 30+ days this year.
Yeah, 20% of the days, and I should say, we are looking to talk to the parents. We were talking about elementary school students who want to come to school, and we want to make sure that there's no other barrier. And this is, I should say, it's when a parent doesn't share with us why they're home. So the parent hasn't called, they haven't said why they're home, or they just call and say that they're home. And it would be repeated, and it would be after a letter, several letters. So I just want folks to know what there's a big process here, and I've never really had, we have a very tiny group of students who are near, you might say near truant or by, by their attendance.
Are they disproportionately students using an IEP or students who are Hispanic?
It's just such a small number
Yeah,
that I couldn't even tell you because,
all right.
The
it's,
problem with our numbers is one family who is one of the two target groups changes the math completely.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Andrews, Ms. Edmonds, and Mrs. Delicio are working as a team.
Yep.
Because frankly, even if a parent calls repeatedly and says, my child is sick, we need to look into it.
Why is John sick so much?
You,
Right.
what's wrong with your, why is your child sick so much?
Exactly.
You know, in COVID-19, we were a little less sure that we should do that. Now, we are at the point where, as you know, because I know you got the memo from, Ms. Delicio. The, guidelines for the way the state suggests school nurses handle sickness are back to no fever for 24 hours, come to school.
Right.
So attendance is a huge issue, and I wanted to be very clear with you up front, before you got your first phone call, hopefully. That it's all about getting kids to school, whether or not it's because of sickness or some other issue.
Well, I mean, I'll say publicly, like, elementary school children, you referenced this before, Mr. Andrews. They are screwed, they don't go to school, they really
Absolutely.
are, I'm sorry to be so bold or crass, but it is such a disservice. If those kids don't come to school, any way to make kids healthy and get them to school, it's critical. What I will say is there are reasons, I can't speak to the special education students, but there are reasons why underrepresented groups sometimes don't engage in parent, I'm looking at the families caregivers. Engagement, and I think this list is good, but one, to address the belonging factor of families. I think spending the time, if there are 11 families that identify as Hispanic, to call individual families and say, there is an open house night, there is a portfolio night, and we would love to have you join, right? It's important to have your lens, your voice, your family, your this, your that. That matters to us as a school community. It is one of the many things that we can do to build that muscle, that belonging muscle, or I would say we have a belonging muscle, like to increase the strength of the belonging muscle, so that those families know that they may be nervous about walking in and being the minority in yet another environment, but the school principal or the teacher or the superintendent has asked them to come. And then it's harder also to not come when somebody's asked you to come, whether you're nervous about coming, you just don't wanna come, or because you're human, but whatever, but I wanted to offer that out.
it's a great idea.
I also think like the more people come to the school, the more traction they have to like be involved in their kids' education, which means the kids are gonna come to school. So just wanted to offer that.
Can I also make a comment too? In the event that it's a transportation issue, yes, Nahant's a small town. This winter, it still feels like winter. I think like in the event that it's a transportation issue, I'm like a family that would be happy to take any child to school if it helps that family out. So like, I think that we also can troubleshoot too, if aside from sickness, if there are other reasons why a family can't get there.
That's a very, very good,
Yeah, thanks.
both of those two
Yeah.
points are very solid.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to that being, are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, could I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Student Opportunity Act Plan for 2024 to 2026.
A second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I think we can quickly wrap up the policies. Second reading, like we're done.
No.
No,
Wishful thinking.
Well, one more item, we're gonna quickly fly through these policies, and I think we had it down to a science at one point.
I feel like you've
so-
been-
Yeah,
We do, but so yes, I'm happy to fly through them. Where is the second reading stuff?
Oh, they're in.
I only see a bunch of first.
No.
No.
Oh.
They need, that means that the first reading was
Oh,
on,
so today's the
the
second, then we
12th,
sign off.
today is the
Okay.
second.
Sorry, guys.
that's okay.
Yes.
And Madam Chair, to address a member of the committee's
No,
humor, that next meeting, you will have the first reading
For the rest
of the last 9
Yeah.
and the first reading of the 16 removals.
Yes.
And
And then we'll be done.
then you'll be done.
Yes. Yes.
And I am pleased to tell you that Chris and Connie worked on the policies on Friday. And we are this close to being caught up.
Oh, God, I gotta write that somewhere.
I was just gonna say, which leaves the introduction. And then, of course, to do that, it will take a long time.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we do that, did you wanna discuss, there were some questions about, I guess, the solicitations by staff and the online fundraising and solicitation.
That's in our packet.
Yeah, that's a.
It's a separate.
Oh,
No, that's a
no.
mistake.
Yeah,
Those 3 that are stapled,
Yeah.
yeah,
throw them away.
yeah.
Oh,
It
we
shouldn't-
did- We did have questions about them, right? About, there was one
Yeah.
about the fundraising.
It'll come up
Okay,
Okay.
in order.
Oh, well, then in that case, so leave them at the end, right?
No, they're in order.
they're not. So
Okay.
it's just, it's
They are
It's the third one in
the
our.
third one.
8D.
It's the. The online.
Well, it's C and D.
C and D, yeah,
Yeah.
C and D.
The C I don't think was an issue, I think it was D. C was just making sure that people knew
Yeah,
that
right,
this
fair.
existed.
And we
And
talked
then-
about
So
like.
Tony, do I
eliminating
did not do anything with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, ready to roll?
Let's go.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve 8A to 8CC.
Each one.
Ah.
You're
Yeah.
losing your stride.
Okay.
That was a really valiant attempt.
I know, I was like.
I was
I
right
had
there
it
with
was
you, I knew you were
I was ready to-
I know, me too, I was like, wait a
Okay.
minute.
Okay, here we go. I'd like to make a motion to approve file GBEA staff ethics conflict of interest.
I'll second, all in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff conduct file GBEB.
There are motions? I'll second, all in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve gifts to and solicitations by staff, file GBEBC.
I'll second. Third first.
I'm the one making the
Oh,
motion.
yes, okay, all in favor?
You're making me feel better about myself. I'd like to make a motion to approve, bless you, online fundraising and solicitations crowdfunding, file GBEBD.
This was the one I had, yeah.
This is the one we had some questions about, Madam
Yeah.
Chair,
Yes.
through you. I don't have any alterations after researching it.
Okay.
It's
It
written by the MASC attorney. With the definition of crowdfunding, which I left on the document.
Yeah.
It seems to be consistent with Mass General Law and expectations.
Okay, so I guess any type of fundraising that coming into the school has to. You know, I think a lot of them do this sort of competition.
Well, the thing I believe I was comfortable with in this policy is the last paragraph. And it basically says that the superintendent can approve different things.
Okay,
So in my opinion, the safeguard for the school committee is that a teacher can't say you can do it, but unless otherwise approved by the superintendent in writing, all goods or proceeds solicited and received through any online solicitation shall become the property of the school committee. So that means the school committee the superintendent can make an exception.
Yeah.
And not of the individual employee who solicited the items and funds. So I think that's a safeguard.
okay. Okay,
I'd like to make, I'll just start over. I'd like to make a motion for online fundraising and solicitations to be approved and crowdfunding, file GBEBD.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve drug-free workplace policy, file GBEC.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff personal security and safety, file GBGB.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve domestic violence leave policy, file GBGE.
Madam Chair, if I may. On your behalf, I discussed this policy with the town administrator. He was of the opinion that the school committee would be best served if it did not in policy say that the leave would always be paid. I told him that it seemed at the first meeting when this was discussed, that that was the school committee's clear intention. And he accepted your intention.
Great. I do think that it's important.
So this goes way beyond the law. You knew that. You wanted to be paid. So it will be.
Right.
Thank you.
I'll start over. I'd like to make a motion to approve domestic violence leave policy, file GBGE.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve family and medical leave, file GBGF.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff participation in political activities, file GBI.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve professional staff salary schedules, file GCBA.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve employment of principals, file GCBB.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve professional staff hiring, file GCF.
Second.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve substitute professional staff employment, file CGC, no, GCG.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve philosophy of staff development, file GCIA.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve professional teacher status, file GCJ.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve support staff contracts and compensation plans, file GDB.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve educational equity, file JBB.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve educational opportunities for military children, file JFABE.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve educational opportunities for children in foster care, file JFABS.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve exclusions and exemptions from school attendance, file JHD.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve student publications, file JICE.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve searches and interrogations, file JIH.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve co-curricular and extracurricular activities, file JJ.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve student fundraising activities, file JJE.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve student activity accounts, file JJF.
Second. All in
Madam
favor?
Chair, before you vote, I would like you to know that I did speak to the town finance director about JJF, student activity accounts. And she was comfortable with it and our present procedures.
Great. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve student welfare, file JL.
Second. All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve student health services and requirements, file JLC.
Second.
Madam Chair, before you accept your vote, I want you to know that I spoke at length with Ms. Delicio about this, and she thinks this is a very solid policy with the changes that we made. You made.
All in favor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve physical examinations of students, file JLCA.
Same as before.
Second.
Okay, same as before, all in favor?
Aye. I'd like to make a motion to approve student fees, fines and charges, file JQ.
I'll second, all in favor?
Aye.
Very well, we did it, buddy. Okay, so.
151 down, time to go.
Alright. So there's two tiny little items for new business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 9A, I believe we covered it thoroughly and well during the principal's report.
Yep.
And item 9B, I would respectfully ask for a motion and a vote to authorize the district to declare approximately 100 of the original metal chairs that have been in this building since the old wing was built. Because your superintendent got 200 of those babies free
Nice.
Nice.
from Essex.
Yeah.
With, which I didn't know was coming, with the carts they stack up on.
Oh, nice.
Oh, great, thank you.
So we got 200 of those in the same room that we had, the storage area, that we could only get 150 of those terrible folding chairs. And these are actually adult bottom sized.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you trying to say?
That they're the only chairs in the school that an adult can sit on without thinking that the adult is
If we're like
too wide.
So with that said, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the surplus of approximately 100 metal folding chairs.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
They are very nice chairs.
They are great, thank you.
so we're almost down the wire. Okay, other committee business. I would like to ask. Would it be an issue if we moved our school committee meeting that we have scheduled on the 9th to next Tuesday?
The second,
No, to next Tuesday,
to Tuesday the second?
Tuesday the 2nd,
Or
or Monday, you can follow there and have opportunity to talk after we get some time to reflect. Okay, I think that would be respectful. And that's okay. with you? Is that okay with you?
The meeting on April 2nd, if I understand, the purpose of the move it would be to have an agenda item for the superintendent decision.
Yeah.
And the dialogue among yourselves would be public. Am I hearing it correctly? And therefore, a decision would be made on April 2nd as compared to April 9th.
Yeah,
Am I getting it?
I think of that, I was thinking of that when he was asking about our time frame for feedback.
In all fairness.
Sure.
I think it's been a really long time.
And I did, so we
Madam
would,
Chair, we have representatives of MASC here, was there an intention of them attending, and if there was, are they available? I don't know. They certainly don't have a vote, so therefore their attendance is not mandatory, but I don't know if you had expected them to be here.
No expectations,
Okay.
always invited.
so, sorry, just to confirm, the second we would be having our dialogue during our meeting.
But we
and
would
the-
have our regular meeting, not an additional meeting. Like we would
Right.
go
Correct,
through
correct.
policies.
We go
and
through,
everything.
we go through.
I guess the other question is then, but then there's the 2nd and then the 26th, is that too long from like a bills and logistical standpoint? I think it'll be okay.
23rd.
With the hope that we make our
November
decision on the
20
second,
something.
and we can,
Um,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to reiterate something I'm sure the members of the school committee are aware of, but if there's an imminent bill that it needs to be paid, or else we would pay a late fee or something, that I authorize the bill to be paid and then you vote for it, on the 26th of
Yeah.
April.
Okay, I can do the second at our regular time, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do the second instead
I
of the
think
9th.
that that would be a good idea.
Okay,
I might have been, I might just be making another train. So. I might have that. Beth, does that work for you?
Yes, okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the discussion. Do you want me to put that at the end of the meeting? That discussion, so that, I'm sorry, I missed what Michelle said.
Oh, no, I was just saying I
no,
have,
she might have to just
I
join
might.
the Zoom.
Well, no, I'll be here, I just might be late.
Okay.
Early.
Yes.
Do you want me to push it down a little bit
We can push.
to accommodate Michelle? That's my
Yeah,
question.
yeah, they're old.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, old business down at the end. Good,
Thank you. Thanks
Okay.
for coming meeting.
Oh, we should vote. I'll make a motion to move the school committee meeting from April 9th to April 2nd.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any announcements?
I sound like a broken record. I don't think that a separate message went out about the school committee position. It went out in the newsletter, but I think that that there's an open school committee position.
And it did go up once in Parents Square.
Did it?
That's what I was
Because
told.
we're all
I
in
didn't
Parents
see it.
Square,
I
and I didn't
I
see
did, I
that.
checked tab and I looked and I didn't see one.
Originally, it went out in Parents Square. That's what I was told.
I think that there's different settings and I don't know if, I don't know the linguistics on why certain things show up as a alert. I mean, I get alerts all the time
that came
from
from you.
Parents Square.
Yes, the first one came
yes.
from me, yes.
But did you work with Kevin on the getting it out?
On the very first one, and then I wanna do another one in terms of encouraging people to apply.
Directly to, or contact Diane?
No, using the verbiage that we were given by.
But who did they apply to?
The very first time, they would have gone through Diane.
No, but there's updated information, because if they're interested.
Yeah, I know, now they have
To
to
be a
change the
write-in.
whole, they have to be
Yes.
right.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay.
Right, yeah.
I don't see a message, I looked.
Yeah, I didn't see one, so I think, I mean, we're weeks away from two of us not being
Being
there
here.
anymore.
Yeah.
When's your last meeting, the 23rd of April?
I'll work with Kevin again.
Okay.
Cause like
And if you
however
need-
it
if you
shows
need
up
any-
so that it's like one of these, that kind of
Yeah.
message would be ideal.
I thought there
Separate.
was.
I don't see it, I didn't see it.
I saw
it in the
it in the
newsletter.
weekly newsletter, but I just,
I missed the first part of this conversation, because I was looking to see if I could do the second, but, do we not have anybody?
No.
Sorry.
Nobody.
I checked today.
Nobody pulled papers.
No one
pulled papers, but there is a way that
you could be a write-in on the ballot.
And nobody has contacted Diane as of 1:30 this
But
afternoon.
we also,
So the
it's a major
options-
commitment, like,
Right.
and you said this when we talked about strong arming one of our friends, or I strong armed, you asked. Like, you have to wanna do it.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
You do.
But I
Yeah.
just don't know that we're reaching our circles,
Yeah.
like, I don't know that we're reaching.
Oh,
out
I
with,
reached
like-
out to other parents in younger grades, I like 16 people.
Yeah.
But I'm not going anywhere until at least June. You guys are a little bit more of an urgency.
Madam Chair, with your permission, I'll talk to Mr. Barletta tomorrow and I'll see if perhaps the selectmen can send something out as the elected highest official in the town.
I mean, that's a good point, because there are community members that
Yeah,
might be interested
that
in
might
that
be-
other
yeah.
parents
Also,
that
like,
aren't parents.
How can you do good governance without?
3.
Oh, no, but I know,
It's-
I know,
Yeah.
this is a critical situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So let's attack it from multiple angles,
Yes.
I mean, ideally, it would be nice to have parents, on the committee.
I think it's.
have people who aren't as well,
Yeah.
and people who.
Madam Chair, can I make an audacious request?
No, of course not.
Perhaps you could find time to call Ben to put it in the Lynn item. That there are vacancies at the school committee.
Yeah.
I mean, it is possibly, yeah. But
Do we wanna advertise?
Yeah.
That's-
Well, cause it's,
That's
all-
not-
yeah.
That's not my call. I just had that thought. The rest of
You know,
it,
it's interesting, two so 3 people spoke to our candidate today. 1 was a parent and 2 were people who no longer have kids in the school system. Which I would think is great.
Yeah.
Like, we want those types of people to try to fill the,
We should, they have more time, so. You know,
There's so many people in the community
that would be,
very
yes.
I'm just like,
being successful.
it's 46 kids. If, let's say, I mean, more than half of them probably live in 2-parent homes in this town, right? It's a lot of 2-parent homes. And so like, that's like at least 200, that's like 200 parents.
I know.
I think you can't find two.
Two.
I mean, when this isn't, I know, if you do the math.
Well, and it's
not
like, so a
great.
lot of the families are involved in other things in the community, like NEF and, you know, it's tricky.
What about asking Mr. LaRue? If he's interested, he's retiring,
That's a good idea.
right? Like,
I don't
then-
think it's a bad idea at all.
I mean,
I've actually.
he's been
thought
here a
about
long time,
reaching out
lives
to
in
some
Nahant, so he
retired
knows the
people. Good
schools.
idea.
I would say anybody.
Yeah.
I do know somebody that's interested that might be going along the lines of the write-in candidate, so I think sharing that that's an option is really helpful. You know, like on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
That even though it's past the date to pull papers, that there are other options to be on this ballot.
So an independent message on Parent Square.
What about a message
Uh,
on the hot moms and dads? Is that
On
a?
Facebook?
Somebody already
Facebook?
did,
So,
yeah. I mean,
Did you
can
text everybody in the
repost it.
second?
No, not the text, like on
I'll
Facebook.
text everybody.
So, Tony, you're gonna reach out to Mr. Valletta. And then who would reach out to one of them? You would, okay, so, and then everybody
Can
continue
I ask
to.
Mr. LaRue?
Yeah, of course you can.
I have Ruth and Conrad on my list to talk with.
Okay,
Yeah,
Ruth lives in Dahant?
Lives in Salem.
Oh. I thought-
Yeah, no, Meredith.
that was Meredith.
Yeah, it's Meredith.
Sorry.
Who's here and.
Oh,
Marsha.
I got another one too. She, her kids did go, but she's retired. Kid Jenkins. Okay.
Okay,
Alrighty, so now.
it's always about networking, isn't it? It always comes down to networking, not advertising.
Can I just add, could we talk at another meeting, definitely not this one, about the school survey and when we're gonna do that again? We haven't done the survey yet. And I think we started talking about it, I think we gave it out in March last year, so.
Sounds right.
We've had a couple of things going on. But that'll be important for the use of the environment learning will be that. Lucky level. Great.
Okay, so if there are no other announcements.
Well, I got one more. It's not an announcement, it's a question. Did we get input, like some kind of written feedback or evaluation or something from the 7 teachers that evaluated the candidate today, Tony?
Not yet.
I have asked Glenn and the chair how I could help. And I believe there is going to be an MASC generated electronic survey.
Great,
Yes.
okay.
And that'll be shared with us.
When- Glenn, when's that gonna go out?
And go out as soon as tomorrow.
I just don't want them to forget.
Tomorrow, if you're okay with the language or you wanna refine whatever language we sent to you, we can have a survey created and a link to you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
did
Glenn.
receive some questions.
Okay, great,
Kindly shared.
awesome. Just as long as we call call the input, especially.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, I would love to get the input of those that need.
And there will be a general announcement to people who want to give input. Is there a question on there, is have you met the new candidate or not?
Hold on.
Meaning like the families that met him?
I can.
Anybody who met him?
The questions.
You have the questions, the
Yes,
draft questions.
I do, I'm gonna read them out loud.
All
okay.
right, but those are not necessarily etched in stone, so
Oh.
if you wanna change them, if you have some guidance about what they should be,
Well,
we'll put them up, we'll put up whatever you tell us.
my guidance is if you're gonna blast this out to get input from anybody, then it has to say, have you met the superintendent or not.
How
If you're
would
just going to be targeting it for people who have met the superintendent in the interview team or today
Alright,
or the town hall, then I can just
okay.
target the people I know.
Or have you seen the interviews tonight on
Yeah.
television?
Yeah, good point.
Oh, yeah. They had
That's
us
right.
out.
Right, that's why I thought you were just saying,
Well, we
have you
changed
met him or
that.
did you watch the interview?
Or you just.
Or are you just making it, having it?
They're just making it up.
I mean, who would do that, said.
Oh, people
What
would.
I-
Oh, please.
What I would
That's,
say
that's
to
gonna
you
be
is,
number one.
just finalize the questions as you want them to be stated. And get them to me tomorrow morning and we will create the survey, give you the link. And get it up. Excuse me, and then you can circulate the link.
Perfect.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much, Glenn. So these are the questions that anybody knows, and we can change them. What are your impressions of the candidate whom the school committee interviewed? What are the strengths that you believe candidate brings to our superintendency? Where will the candidate need to focus in order to be successful? Why is this candidate a good selection for Nahant or not a good selection? If you would prefer another candidate or want the school committee to continue to solicit candidates, please explain.
Do whatever you want.
Okay.
Just that
Can't really
we
think of it.
we don't engage in group editing, so you can.
Yeah.
and
No, I
that's
think those are good key points.
Do we know who came tonight? To see?
How many people attended the Zoom, do we know?
That's what Beth was just asking, I think we can find out.
Did you see, were you in the Zoom, Gina? No, and you were also like focused on.
Kevin may know. It'd be good to know.
I'm just curious if there were like,
There were that many, just based on how I could see far away when I first came up. Yeah, there were. Really disappointed by how few people
Never know what's going on.
watched or came.
One of those report rules we could have. Okay.
So what do we think of the questions?
I can't think of anything else.
I'm also,
Excellent. So we'll just add the one about having met the superintendent or watched the interview.
yes,
Yes.
I'll send these back to
Great.
Glenn.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
They have like.
Right.
It's just, I've been having growing up
it had to be
today.
a required response before they can move on to that.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to enter into executive session, not to reconvene to open session for the reading and approval of the executive session minutes on 3/12/24 and a strategy session with respect to negotiation of a contract with a non-union personnel, the 2024-25 superintendent of schools.
I second, aye,
Aye. All in favor,
aye.
Okay,
All right, I'm gonna turn this off.
thank you, everybody.
9:18.
Yeah, I know.
Good night.